Hi everyone, my name is Alyssa Vargas and I'm a teaching artist with BMCYF Space to Create program. And today I'm going to be doing a video with you guys on making some Christmas ornaments. So we're going to be using pieces of wood like this, and it's got a hole here and it's got some string, or yours might have some ribbon. And so you can get these and pick them up at BMCYF and get your project packet so you can get started on this. And so what we're going to be doing is acrylic painting and doing a little snowman on the front of it. And then you can hang that on your Christmas tree. All right, so let's get started. So here is the ornament that I'm going to be working on. It's got a hole drilled in and some string so that it can hang on the Christmas tree. And then I've got my paper towel as well as my acrylic paint brushes, and I chose all smaller ones because I'm going to be working on this little surface. And then I've got my water, and then I've got my paints. And so what I'm going to be using are my Liquitex basic acrylic paints. You can use any acrylic paints that you have, but this was my favorite brand to use. And so I'm going to be using my primary colors, and then I'm going to be using black and white as well. And then the only other thing you will need is just a palette to put your paint on. One other thing I forgot to mention is that you're going to need a pencil that has an eraser. That way we can start sketching out the snowman first, and then we can go over it with our paint. When you're sketching your snowman out, try to make sure to keep your lines very light, because you don't want it to be too dark. Otherwise, when you go to put your paint on, you may be able to see those lines right through your paint, and you don't want that. I'm going to be giving my snowman a top hat, and I'm also going to give him a little scarf as well. Once I'm finished with my sketch, I'm going to start out on the background. And so what I want to do is make it look like he's sitting in the snow, and then I'm going to draw some trees behind him and make some snow falling. I'm starting out with just some pure white paint as the snowfall on the ground. Then I'm taking a little bit of blue and adding it to my white, and then adding a tiny little bit of black to that as well, just so it makes the blue a little less of a bright blue. And then what I'm doing is adding some shading, and it's creating some texture on the snowfall on the ground. I'm also creating a shadow underneath the snowman because he's tall, so he's going to be casting a shadow on the ground beneath him. Next, I'm going to take this same blue and start on the background with it, and as I go up, I'm going to start adding more and more white to it so that as I get closer to the sky level, it's going to be more brighter, more lighter up there, so that you can tell the difference between the ground and where the trees are going to be, and then up above where the sky is going to be. I'm also going to be adding some clouds to the sky as well once I get up there. As I paint around the string, I'm going to try to be really careful not to get any paint on it, because it won't be too easy to get it off of my string. If you have ribbon, you could also remove it if you want to, and then put it back on later. I'm going to leave mine on, but I'm just going to make sure to be careful as I go around it. The next thing I'm going to do is touch up the area where the snow on the ground meets the background. I'm just going to make sure to fill this in so that there's no space in between where you can see the wood coming through. Next, I'm taking the blue that I used and I'm just adding a little bit more black to it, and that way it creates a darker blue. And then I'm creating these lines, and then I'm using the edge of my brush to create texture and going down the tree. And that's creating some branches on the tree. And from far away, it does look like a tree from far away when you do this. I try to make my strokes a little bit quick and try not to overthink it too much when I do this, because no trees are really perfect looking. So I try to create that when I'm doing this. I don't want my trees to look like I spent a lot of time on them. Otherwise they become a little bit too uniform and not very realistic. Now that I'm done with the trees, I'm taking some white and I'm creating some snowfall. So I want to make sure that I add the snowfall to the darker areas, like around the trees, because you're going to be able to see it a lot better in those spaces. So now I'm going to be taking my brush, washing it off, and then adding some pure white to it. And I'm going to use this to create the clouds. And so I'm doing the same thing, making some texture and being really quick about it. And I'm using a dry brush because it's going to create that kind of wispy cloud effect a bit better. The next thing I'm going to do is take this same pure white and start on the bottom half of the snowman's body. And I'm going to just go over the little buttons that I made and the arms as well. I'm not too happy where the arms are in the first place. I think I'm going to actually make them sticking out instead. And if I go over the buttons, since they're pretty easy to just draw over again, it's better to go over them, and then that way I'm not trying to go around those little circles, because if I try to paint around those circles, it's probably going to create less of an even surface of that white paint. It would also be a lot more time consuming to go around those dots rather than to just draw them back on later. Now I'm going to start filling in the face, and I'm going to do the same thing as I did with the bottom of the body on this, where I'm going to go over the mouth for right now, and then I'm going to add that back on later. But I am going to go around the eyes and the nose, just so I know where those are going to sit, because those are going to be pretty important to still see here. Both the body and the face may need 2 coats of paint. If you can see any of the wood through it, then you're going to want to wait till it dries and then paint back over it again. I'm going to take the blue that I used to shade the snowfall on the ground, and I'm going to use it to shade the snowman now. You want to use the same color of blue because the snow that is used to make the snowman obviously is the same snow that's on the ground, so the shading should be similar. And I'm going to shade this as if he was a big sphere. So there's the shading on the sphere, and then there's the cast shadow on the ground. And then I'm leaving a little bit of white around the outside of the sphere, and that is the reflected light. So the light that is being reflected from the white snowfall on the ground. When I'm done, I'm going to do the same exact thing with the sphere of the face. So I'm starting out with that blue, and then I'm going to be adding some more white to it so that I can blend that blue better into the rest of the snow. Next, I'm going to wash my brush off. I'm going to take my really small brush and just dab it into my black, and then I'm going to use that for the eyes. I'm going to try to get some perfect little circles as good as I can. I'm going to be doing the same thing with the mouth. And so since the mouth is usually made out of little rocks when you make a snowman, I'm going to just be doing little dots in a row. Afterwards, I'm going to take my white and just add a little bit of some highlight to the eyes. The next thing I'm going to do is take my little brush with some black on it, and I'm going to start filling in the top hat. So I'm going to make this top hat black with a red accent. Now I don't want the top of the hat to blend in with the rest of the hat, so I'm going to be using a little bit of a lighter color. So I'm taking a little bit of white and mixing it in with my black. That way you can tell the difference between the sides of the top hat and the top of the top hat. And that way it's going to create a little bit of a 3D effect, so it's not going to look flat. Now I'm going to take a little bit of that gray and add it to my hat in the front. That way it looks like this hat is curving, it doesn't look flat, and you can tell that the hat has more of a circular shape to it. And then I'm going to just take a little bit more white and mix it with that gray. That way I have a better highlight. By doing this, the top hat will really start to take shape. Now I'm taking some pure red straight out of the tube, and I'm using it for the highlight. So I'm going to start out with a solid layer of this red, and then I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the hat, with the black part of the hat, and I'm going to add a little bit of highlight that is going to coincide with the highlight that is on the black part of the hat there. So all I'm going to do is mix in a little bit of white to create a pink, and then I'll start adding a highlight. For the scarf, I decided I wanted to make it a candy cane pattern, so it's going to have red, white, and so I'm going to take my pencil and draw where I want these lines to be. That way I can fill in every other one of them with red and then the other ones with white. Taking some white and adding it to the red one more time, I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the hat, and that way I add a little bit more dimension to this by highlighting a little bit of this scarf. A lot of scarves have these pieces of thread that hang off of them, and so I'm going to be adding this to the scarf. And to create these really thin lines with my brush, what I'm doing is mixing in a little bit of water to my red paint. By making the red paint a tiny bit more watery, it makes it easier to get these really fine lines. Next, I mixed some orange using my yellow and my red paint, and then I'm filling in the snowman's carrot nose. And then I'm creating a little bit of a shadow on the carrot nose by taking a little bit more red, adding it to that orange, and then I'm just shading the underside with it. To finish the snowman scarf, I'm going to take some white and then fill in every other one of these spaces with white. And then I'm going to do the same thing as I did with the rest of the scarf where the red is, and just going to add some shading to it. To finish the scarf, I'm going to take some black and white, mix it together to make a lighter gray, and then I'm just going to be shading these white areas of the scarf. Now it's time to add the buttons, so I'm going to take my black and I'm going to do the same thing that I did for the eyes and try to get some perfect circles as much as I can. When I'm done, I'm going to take a little bit of white and just highlight these slightly. For the arms, I decided to face them outwards instead of inwards towards the body like I had done in my sketch earlier. So what I'm doing is I created a brown, and to create this brown, I mixed together yellow and red to make orange, and then I added black to that orange and it created brown. Using this brown, I'm just creating the sticks for the hands. And now the last thing I'm going to do is create some more snowfall over top of the front of the snowman. That way you can tell that the snow is falling all around him. Here's the finished ornament. I hope you enjoyed this holiday tutorial today. If you created one of these ornaments using this video, please show us by either bringing it to BMCYF or sharing it with us on Facebook. You can also subscribe to BMCYF's YouTube channel to watch more Space to Create tutorials. Thanks for watching. See you next time.